Welcome to the Myofascial Magic in Action podcast. My name's Joanne, Avison, and here's my wonderful colleague and co-founder, Paul Thornley.
Hi, how are you doing, Joanne?
I'm doing great. How are you doing after your trip to the UK and your wonderful workshop?
Loved it. Nice to get away. I love traveling. I love sharing information and meeting new people, seeing what they're getting up to in their own various establishments. But yeah, I love the UK. I love going home to my hometown in Manchester. It's where I feel the most relaxed.
That's just brilliant. Now, you did your famous workshop, the pelvic foot, which is one of the, let's say, founding principles within MMIA, Myofascial Magic in Action course and program. And you worked with, how many people did you have in the workshop? Because I know it's very last minute and just lots of requests and only those that were local. But
ad hoc, it was like a spur of the moment. I'm traveling home. A longtime colleague there, Nisha, has a lovely studio in Manchester. It's called Sale, and it's called Pilates Manchester. And of course, yeah, she said, listen, we'd like to run a workshop here. I said, yeah, I'd love to. I'm at home. I'll come and do it. We just put it together. I did the mini introduction one, just 3 hours, just as an introduction to a different approach to understanding human physiology. And then how you apply that in a really practical way that they take away instantly. And it just helps them review what they currently understand and how they traditionally approached pelvic issues. And it just made them question certain things they've already established and maybe leave the door open for trying some new things.
well, what I wanted to ask you about, because I know how well it went down, and I know that one of our established myofascial magic in action specialists was there with you. And I know she absolutely loved the opportunity of working with you in person. But I also know that you introduced some things that were quite new to people. How did you start it? Because you've got a premise. Let's start there. What's your premise? Your premise about how the movements that we train for and the movements that we do in our everyday lives, there's a disconnect because we're not trying to teach a new modality, an alternative. We're trying to join the dots of what people are already doing, right?
Well, yeah, I think we call our stuff based on our influence from John Sharkey, the 21st century understanding of human anatomy and physiology. But we don't look at people's lives in the same 21st century. We still look at them as if they're going to be gladiators of the past. Like we have to fight for our survival, and we have to fight for our food, and we have to fight for our family, and we have to be at our fittest and strongest all the time. And let's be honest, most people get Deliveroo for everything. Everything is delivered to them. Like being healthy is inconvenient because it requires you to get up and get dressed and go out and do it. And most people barely get out of bed. They might go and have a shower, they get dressed, they get in the car, they go to work, they come back, they have dinner, they go to sleep, and they repeat for 40, 50 years. And what we find in our clinics is we got into the injury world quite early in our days, didn't we? And it's
Yeah.
repeating decade on decade. People are just tired, and they're picking up injuries and niggles that they're collecting on their way. And all too often, the approach by the healthcare and fitness world is to transform them from this sedentary or active or sports keen or sports specific person into a perfect gladiator to tackle the arduous nature of living in a 21st century world. And it doesn't make sense that their primary, one of the most primary exercises is squatting. Why? Exercise squatting and lifestyle squatting are two totally different activities. They look similar, and we have a phrase from the Philippines, same but different. Like it's just totally different. It's a different use of your body for different functionalities. And who's going to squat in such a way that they emulate or try to copy a kangaroo? Kangaroos squat because that's the nature of their anatomy and their physiological requirement to move easily. Humans, we walk on one leg and we transfer our weight more, and we should easily, but we do it so poorly that we create all manner of issues in our body, and yet we try to address it by doing a bilateral exercise when we are a unilateral being.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And, you know, another thing that came up, and we'll stick with your workshop for a bit, but I do want to say this. We've had the most fabulous responses, you know, on private email, on messages on Instagram and so on, and on YouTube comments to our practical and technique-oriented videos. Fabulous feedback. Really grateful to everybody if you're one of the people that's given us that feedback. And it was like the one we did on the hands about grip strength. Now, let's be really clear. grip strength is a good measure of certain things as we age. But what happens is that gets lifted out of the narrative, and then everybody's all about grip strength. How do you hold the weights? How do you hold a barbell? Now, not that many people carry shopping anymore. As you said, Deliveroo sends it, or Just Eat, or whoever it is. We're not advertising here, but whoever it is sending it to your door. And clutching on a Zimmer frame or a car wheel is kind of it. And yet, what do we actually need in our everyday life? We need dexterity. We need to be able to create things with our hands, to facilitate, to touch each other, to, I met somebody yesterday, very, very dear old friend of mine, and her partner, and he's suffering, God bless him, from Dupuytren's, Viking's disease. And he'd obviously been told to put his hands in some sort of cast overnight to stiffen them and hold them still, with this vague idea that because they're closing towards a gripped position permanently, which is the future of that disease, that's going to rest it. But nobody had done anything with him about mobility. Nobody had done anything with him about subtle, deep movements. And in my training, I was told 25 years ago, you can't do anything for this condition. And yet I've worked with John Sharkey and seen some of the most extraordinary changes in that tissue, sometimes with medical intervention, with needling, but sometimes with simply by encouraging the client to just think differently and not act as if they're in some sort of boot camp that leaves them with a sort of army-based training to hold everything. And surely that dexterity is what we want to be working for. So we've got to be so careful about this kind of boot camp approach.
Well, it's the classical standard, right? It's the universal approach to healthy being. Is to do fitness tests to test somebody's capability under fitness scenarios, whether it's walking, VO2, strength, grip, push, pull. And yes, it's very, very important to maintain your independence, to be able to do things well. Of course it is. We want to be able to hold something and turn something and take the lid off a jar and clean our teeth and maybe pick something up that we have to move and transport around our home or in a gym or wherever. Yeah, this is really important that we have the awareness of how to do it. But like you say, most people don't even sign their name anymore. They've lost the skillful nature of these hands and their digits. Most people's toes are crushed in their shoes. And the ramifications of these distal parts of our body becoming restricted has a huge influence on the internal effect of our global continuity. And yet we make the extremes so hard and so strong and so forceful that we lose the subtlety of integration of everything else. And,
Amen. Amen.
and that's my worry about this continued approach that is hardwired to this healthcare and fitness industry. It's about making it harder, stronger, and transformative, instead of making it more capable so that it can transform to how you require it to perform in your own life. Because not everybody is going to fight. Some people are going to sit there and use a computer. You're an author. You're never going to try and tackle somebody over, and you're never going to lift heavy weights. You'll delegate that to somebody else, but you should be able to move your weight of you, your being, easily. And what takes us down this road and what's made us and convinced of us of our approach is learning about human physiology as we know it today, not rely upon somebody's interpretation of it from 400 years of yesteryear. We know that we're a liquid crystal. We know that the more subtle you are and the more respectful you treat your living body, the easier and more refined it will respond. Keep asking it to perform in such harshness and such aggression to achieve such personal bests in an action does not make it more capable in a global interaction.
Well, also, Paul, you and I both see a lot of people, in the one hand, becoming more sedentary as they age. But what is really, I know we're both quite upset about, is the amount of what we see as repetitive strain injury in younger people who don't need these issues. And I know I was reading a little while ago about surgeons being taught to knit because they've grown up holding a mobile phone and only using their
Yeah.
thumbs, and the hands and fingers and digits are not dexterous enough to do the sutures that they need to do with the subtlety that really good medicine and surgery honors and trains surgeons in. Now, we're not criticizing all surgeries. We're not criticizing medicine. Thank God for it and where it's reached. But when we go deep on the physiology of how this liquid crystal matrix actually interacts, we're changing approaches. We're evolving them with this growing knowledge. And we know that the old way of working on a scar, for example, where you basically stick your elbow in it and you grind it and break it down. No, it's an intelligent tissue. If you break it down, it says, uh-oh, I'm being broken. I'd better strengthen, thicken, and deepen my tissue matrix. And we see in cadaveric specimens these thick bands of scar tissue under the skin. So when we now know, through the lovely work that, for example, Jan Trewartha is doing, the director of the British Fascia Symposium, where you work with scars very gently because you reawaken that subtlety in the tissue. We're not saying everything's got to be soft and stroked and easy, because my goodness me, the refined part of myofascial magic in action is really challenging. But, what happened in your workshop when you got to refine?
Well, this is the thing, right? All of these workshops, depending on who teaches it, I can only teach from the way I teach it, because everybody comes with their own acquired educational journey and what they're biased to listening and hearing and then utilizing in their own facilities. And we had physiotherapists, osteopath, a chiropractor there, Pilates, yoga, a chemist. We had a variety of people. We had my own sister there who's got no educational background in anatomy and physiology. She just likes training. So she was like the audience that these people have to serve. And it was nice to get her feedback. But I find my workshops are an invitation to look at what they currently know and trade it against what I'm offering them. And it's a trade. So my first slide, after I've asked them to introduce themselves, where they come from, what they currently know, how they currently approach pelvic issues, and what's their bias. And my first slide is fascial slings do not exist, and the brain does not recognize muscles. Well, that just opened Pandora's box, because that challenged everything that they currently understood the body to do because of where they'd learnt it from. And it's not that they learnt it wrong or that I'm teaching it better. It's that I'm offering them and inviting them to challenge what they learned, how they truly understand it, and does it reflect the reality of human physiology? And when you offer them the theory and then you offer them the practical experience to reflect that theory directly in front of them immediately, it's irrefutable. They have to challenge what they currently know and how they go about it and go, I never thought of it that way. And now the door's open for conversation and exploration and then collaboration of different styles and different approaches. Because remember, everything works until it doesn't. And then you seek help. And nobody has all the answers. But we're looking for better solutions for people that are really suffering, and that we're lucky, and we're very lucky in our industry because we like serving people to get the opportunity to help as many as possible. But we don't know everything. But what we do know is that we're not mechanical. We absolutely know that there are no levers. We know that the brain does not recognize muscle. The brain is a library of activities you've already taken part in. The body is a brain. It's not only located inside your bloody big head. And it's letting them have an opportunity to have a different perspective on how they view somebody's movement style from where they live and how they've come to be so dysfunctional, from the foot to the pelvis to the breathing to any certain movement restrictions or movement bias. You then have to take a step back and not assume something. You have to go, well, how did that area become the victim of how they moved all of them? And addressing that area independently and isolating it, in this case, it was the pelvic floor, they have to go, whoa, that's not as effective as I thought it might be. And that's why I found myself, my favorite technique, not working as often as I would like it to, because they've always addressed things the same way, almost like McDonald's produces the same meal and just keep pushing it out there. And it will hit a certain satisfactory marker for the vast majority. But some people go, oh, that does not hit the mark at all. And in any sort of physiological dispute in the body, anywhere there's an area that's been victimized by the wholeness of you because you moved inefficiently in one area, everything moves inefficiently. And ultimately that leads to these pathologies. It makes you take a step back and takes a breath and go, okay, would be how I would like to approach it. But will that serve this person based on where they come from and how they're going to go back to that environment and continue to move? How can I address that more successfully for them?
Well, this is where I want to ask you about your. You were talking about a lot of the trainings that we do. We learn to hang, and we learn to pull, and we learn to squat and
Yeah.
push, and it's based on those tests. How good is your grip? How good is your push? How good is your pull? And of course, in my world of yoga, how good is your stretch? How far can you open the joints? And I've literally had people ask me to mentor them in the splits, side splits and forward and back splits. And I've declined because I know the consequences and the ramifications. That young body, those ligaments binding those so-called joints, a word I don't like. They're actually dynaments in my world. Thank you, Jaap van der Waal. That they are based on a coiled system. And if you tighten a coil too much, you tear its roots off. And if you open a coil too much, and it can't spring back. And it's a spring-loaded system. And that's all we seek to give people access to in Myofascial Magic in Action. It's not a new modality. It's a join the dots and preserve the spring. And what is very, very hard to say without sounding controversial or like we've got the latest modality is just, it's a plea, isn't it? On your knees. When do we hang from trees?
Well, it's been a long time. No,
Why do you want to be able to do
it's
that?
been a long time, right? And if people like climbing and kids like climbing, you don't teach a kid how to climb. They go and explore, can they climb? And can they fall and recover from falling to climb again? But once they can stand up properly, we tell them to sit down. Once they can talk a lot, we tell them to shut up. And then we go into our adolescence and then into our adult life and into our elder life, and we follow the same protocols. We're expected to not move so much, move as limited as possible to create the least amount of inconvenience to others as possible. And now they want you to restore climbing abilities. And the fact is, yes, we should be able to climb, but it's not a measure of your fitness ability whether you can't climb. Because when are you going to need to? You're never going to need to. Most people don't lift anything above their head. They get on a stepladder and walk towards it and put it in. If you're overreaching, that's when people get hurt because they do it so infrequently. It's not the normal movement of a 21st century human today in the society that we created. So if you want to climb, that's a sport-specific requirement. That's something you're trying to attain the ability to do. And that's fine. But just because you can't doesn't mean that you're any less. It just means you're not going to do it. And you'll find a different way of maneuvering yourself around the forest that you live in, which is most forests here are concrete. And there's no climbing required. You don't even walk the stairs. Most people let them do it.
I was going to say, press the button for the elevator.
You're asking people to attain these skill sets that are not useful to them today, but they are beneficial for fun and play. That's absolutely fine. If it's a playful, fun, good, that's fantastic. If it's your sport-specific attainment and you need it to do that sport, then of course you must train specifically for it. And that comes with its own ramifications, just like the dancers. A dancer may need to do the splits. We need to know how to manage the ramifications of doing that on their pelvis and on their overall structural integrity so we can help them manage their career length. But it's not something that everybody else needs to attain because doing the splits is a specific thing for a specific art, not just something can I do.
Well, this is such an interesting question because this is where myofascial motion types come in, and it's so exciting when you have those distinctions. And that's something we're working on at the moment, and it's a part of Myofascial Magic in Action, but we're going to take it into the kind of the next aspect of the program, is being able very rapidly to basically body read in motion and select that from your micro movement medicine pots, what's the dose and degree that person needs at that moment. Because if that person is very bendy and mobile, and you give them lots of bendy mobility movements like yoga, they're going to fatigue, right? And if that person is super strong and has a tendency towards stiffness, which is not a bad thing because we need some to be able to spring, you want them perhaps to be a little bit more supple. But if they're way too supple, you want them to be a little bit more compressed, a little bit more taut. That's the word. And what I love about what you said about that workshop, particularly, and shout out to Maria Zervas, our myofascial magic in action specialist. And she came over from Wales to work with you, didn't she, in Manchester? And Maria openly shares her knee replacement, and she's in her 70s. And yet, how did she manage with the group?
Well, completely. She was not a fish out of water. She was at home doing them because she spent the better part of 4 to 5 months doing it repetitively with us under our tutelage, thank God. And what a gift we have to train with somebody like that who's so dedicated to learning. But then she applied it every day with her own clientele. So she was refining her understanding and refining her delivery, which refined the outcome. And over that time frame, she got better at understanding what was necessary to refine it, to understand all the elements of our myofascial work, to make the magic reveal itself with herself and her clientele, and how she explains it, because her understanding of it is much more profound now. But it takes time. But she invested time. And that was the proof was in the pudding when she's amongst a room of various ages and abilities, from some very fit people to some quite sedentary, some very young to some quite older, and she was in the older category. And she was more than capable than all of them because she understood the process of positioning, sequencing, and inviting an appropriate intensity to reveal the magic of her myofascial body. So she knew how to organize herself to not fatigue quickly, to have the ability to understand where she was challenging her capability, to maximize her refinement of endurance so she was resilient but not strained. And she knew when to back off. It's not an Olympic game. We're trying to see what you're able to do, how your transitional awareness is there, and do you need to move or change or alter or stay where you are? And that you then start to become really skilled at understanding how you are moving you. And she just was light years ahead of them all because she's invested a long time. Whereas this is most of these people who are all seasoned professionals at what they do, but do not know the refinement of the human physiology. They only know and are very capable of asking it to perform, but are not aware of how to ask it to transform and recover during motion. And that was really telling because they all know how to make it do things, but they don't understand how it did it. They only understand how it goes wrong, and then they try to put it back right as quick as they can to try and do it again and fail again because they've got to their threshold of capability. Because they're not aware of how to change and refine in motion. And this is the general public. They're all able to do everything. You name any class out there, any fitness class in the world now, it's all about doing it, taking part and doing it. But nobody's asking how I do it. How do I recognize that I'm still doing it well? How can I maintain an opportunity to change what I'm doing as I'm doing it so I can maintain my participation? So I need to modify slightly. I need to have a continued skill set and maintain the heightness of awareness that things are changing. The music is changing. My tempo is changing. My temperature, my levels of skillfulness are being challenged and being able to adapt in the moment well. Like driving a car, you must always be transforming and adapting to every moment in motion. Ask an F1 driver if he takes his eye off the ball at all. If he does, he crashes. Like that refinement is not all about the least amount of work. The refinement needs to often is at the other end of the spectrum, at the most skilled requirement to be able to respond in a moment's notice to maintain effortless motion. And that's what's so good about MMIA. It gives you the skills to recognize where you are in any given moment of motion and do something appropriate that benefits you.
That's, I think, one of the keys. And I think if we're not saying anything negative about the rest of the group. I mean, the rest of the group, I think, recognized and relaxed at the
Well,
end, right?
again, whenever you have a group of people of mixed knowledge base, of mixed sports foundational and exercise based knowledge, you're going to have a variation of interpretation. So I don't do work that dictates what's happening. my workshop is to invite you to challenge what you think you know and try this to see how it challenges it or reinforces your confidence in what you know. And now it's up to you, because I remember I'm going to go my way, you're going to go your way. And those that blend and we start to collaborate, we stay in contact because we find a common ground where we can learn from each other. And those that find what I do challenge them too much and they find it very uncomfortable because it means they recognize they're going to have to change everything because I've now wrecked their house of cards. They get quite defensive, but that's on them. It's got nothing to do with me. Like, I just bring my 20 odd years of experience in this industry, but 54 years of in the moving world, because I've been taught by many people, and I lay it bare. I said, this is why I am where I am. This is why I've created my opinion based on what I was taught and how I went and learned and interpreted it, and how I've delivered it and changed my delivery over those years to accommodate new knowledge and research. So I stay at the very forefront of it if I can. And I'm very honest. I think this works better than some other things. But I also know my limitations. I know I need to incorporate other movement modalities that will enhance mine. Because you need variations of everything, right? Well,
But this is about application into practice. And so what was the result of the workshop? Did the group love it and did they want to change? I mean, you were telling me a gorgeous story before about one of the physios that said that she's got to change everything that she's doing to date, but you gave her a kind of a lovely different point of view.
but it's because she's training a group of individuals, or looking after a group of individuals at the peak of their physical prowess in a sport specific arena. And their job is to keep the shirt on their back, because there's a queue of people that want that same shirt, because that brings them into the limelight. And all those people wearing the shirt, all they're interested in is not losing it, not maintaining and refining their ability, just getting back into playing form and using their skill to remain there until they can't.
To stay
And
in the team.
it's just like the modern day gladiators. Gladiators are entertaining. We love them. We remember watching. We all watched Gladiator 1 and 2, and we're all enthralled by it. But we're always waiting for Gladiator 3. We still want to be entertained by the next fittest, less injured, more capable entertainer, which is what the sporting world all is. All about entertainment. And those people at the peak of their ability to entertain us are not interested in longevity. They want it today. They need it today, and they'll keep hold of that aspiration to be the very best in the world for as long as they can till tomorrow. But very few of them are looking for the 20 or 30-year goal, because they're not interested, and it's not required. It's a business. But life shouldn't be about business. The general public shouldn't base their long-term health aspirations on the short-term goals of these sporting elite. And this woman is like, oh, wow. So when she now deals with a prime athlete, she cannot apply the same process to one of the fans. And that's what she found confusing. She's like, oh, wow. Yeah. Because she treats the same, because you have the same approach for everybody. And you go, no, you've got to treat them differently, because they've got different expectations from you for themselves where they're going to actually perform. One is
Their version of a gladiator might be getting up every day and getting through their day, because there's 4 kids to manage and a job and a family and a dog and or 2 and whatever. But it just may be that that's their version of a
I would argue
marathon.
that that's a harder version than the sporting elite. Managing a day-to-day family requires a lot more resilience and is more arduous, because that doesn't go away. That stays forever. Like, your sporting career lasts a short term. Some people get a good long career, but most don't. Most have a short career, make themselves as wealthy as they can so they can enjoy retirement or go into coaching or some of the elements of that sport that they're so passionate about. But as a therapist or a movement specialist within it, we have to make sure we tailor our understanding of human physiology of today to the people that are going to require it tomorrow. And that's your customers. So asking people to squat so profoundly, good that they can squat, but they're not a bloody kangaroo. People walk, and they should be promoted to walk more. And we know through walking, you have to rotate, because rotation is the most powerful movement that a human being can do, because it's easy, it's free, and it's how everything organizes and reflects the true physiology of what we are, which is why we have such longevity of motion. And although we have similarities with monkeys, our scapula and our humeral heads and our collarbones and our rib cages are formed differently to function differently. A monkey will never throw a ball. It can't, because it's not designed to. But we are. and so trying to be a monkey is fun, but we should be a human first. And humans need rotation and counter rotation in abundance, rather than the ability to climb or hang from one arm.
And on that note, I think we have the title of our next practical. We're going to look at rotation. So look out for that video, and just sending lots of blessings and love and light out there in the world to everybody. Don't forget to click subscribe. Don't forget to write to us and ask about myofascial magic in action if you're a teacher of movement, because it's just the perfect spices and seasonings to add to whatever movement dishes or therapies that you currently teach or treat people with. Paul, thank you so much for sharing that fabulous workshop. And I've seen the feedback on Instagram and had personal messages from people. So it was absolutely brilliant.
It was a treat to teach it. It was a treat to chat to you. Look after yourself, everybody. Bye-bye.